What's going on, everybody? LK here. So today I want to talk a little bit more about characters. I've been trying to go through the cast, talk about their pros and cons, but on stream actually a specific character came up in discussion, and that is Bridget. Bridget is a little unusual because she's not like super common in most regions, but recently in our region a lot of people have been either trying her, switching to her, especially like around Frosty Faustings. A lot of people have been talking about Bridget. Unlike some of the other characters where I've done just talking about like their pros and cons and how I feel they fit in the meta, since Bridget is kind of in a unique spot, can't really say how good I think she is still. I want to talk about why people have been talking about her more competitively, at least in this region. So I think a good way to start is to say that the winter patch really helped flesh out Bridget as a character and how she plays. So there's a handful of really important reasons why I think more people are more enthusiastic about trying to play the character competitively, why you see more people trying to try out the character to see if they'll help with tournaments. Bridget is a fast character that you can't use anti-fast character tactics against. The better you get at Guilty Gear, the more you'll start to have macro understanding of the game overall. So if you're familiar with like Exerd has a lot of isms that help you fight general types of characters. So one of them, for example, would be if you can't fight a fast character, you should try to swing with big buttons and get counter hits and do a lot of damage, because most of the time the fast characters don't have a lot of life. In this game, the fast characters, so characters like Giovanna, Milia, Chip, they do have a few things in common and strategies you can use against all of them. So for example, most of them have problems where their good pokes have like an extended hurt box that you can abuse somewhat easily. So Milia, her far slash is like super good, for example. Chip is as well. And both of these characters, you can hit their far slashes in relatively low commit ways pretty easily. So Baiken, for example, I can use Tatami to protect myself and hit the extended hurt box of far slash pretty easily. Because while this move is really big, it is not disjointed. This does work against Bridget too, when you look at moves like far slash or 5H. So while the tip of that yo-yo is disjointed, the hitbox is kind of what it looks like, but behind the actual yo-yo, there's actually an extended hurt box sticking out there. So it's disjointed, but Bridget does extend her hurt box pretty far. It's a little bit reminiscent of characters like Ram. So for example, you can do stuff like that. So this is me going under it. For reference, this is what it looks like. I can go under it like this. The yo-yo is above me. But in other cases, I'll get hit by the far slash like that. So because she's so far, I can't use the typical way of using Tatami Gaishi to just put a hitbox in front of me, because she's sending the yo-yo really far out at me. Another one that people tend to use is that they'll use like pretty fast buttons like kicks to try to deal with these moves. But again, it's not really going to work so well on moves like far slash and 5H. Bridget overall has pretty big buttons for being so fast, so mobile. So despite having these projectiles and various ways to move around the screen and stall around the screen, she also has far slash, 5H, again very big coverage here, so it's really hard to know where to stand against the character. It's easy for Bridget to establish her game plan as well. So even if something like this is out on the screen, one of Bridget's goals is to move around the screen in general and get people to feel kind of flustered, and she's able to do that in many situations. For example, with Baiken, I describe Baiken's main goal as being a linebacker. So your goal is to hold a position to the best of your ability. So matchups where Baiken performs well is where characters have problems dealing with moves like far slash, H Kabari, and Tatami Gaishi. If a character can deal with these moves well, especially H Kabari, usually Baiken has to adjust her game plan quite a bit, and it can be a little annoying to quite difficult depending on the character. Since one of Bridget's two main goals, in my opinion, is to abuse her mobility, there's nothing really stopping her from doing this. It's instant startup essentially, and she has both a way of hitting you by doing the 236S, or if you're turtling too much, she can do this version and kind of force you to do stuff or force you to walk back, which is pretty threatening. So it's a little harder to define like what does Bridget actually struggle with. Not saying that Bridget doesn't struggle with anything at all, it's just that it's not as clear as some other characters. Then she has really strong mix-up that's very, very straightforward. So again, if you compare the two characters, Baiken has a strong mix-up that's pretty straightforward, but for the most part, you need meter or a certain situation like throw to have a good, really strong, threatening mix-up. So by this point, you've seen this a million times if you watch me play, or if you watch any other Baiken play. This type of high-low mix-up that Baiken has available is very common and very threatening. But in other spots, it might not be so clear. For example, what's the best thing can you get off this versus this? In Bridget's case, you have a relatively straightforward thing because when you get a hit, you set up this type of situation, and once they actually block your roll, you have a 50-50. And the ways that you layer this mix-up is also pretty straightforward as well, and they kind of just have to hold it. So with these things, what you've seen from the character, so outside of people who just picked up the character when she came out and main Bridget because they like Bridget, she has kind of an interesting matchup spread. One of the most common things we've seen from Bridget so far is Bridget as a counterpick to Happy Chaos. So with Season 2 nerfs to Happy Chaos, his zoning style of play is weaker than before. It's harder to establish zoning early on in the game. Again, this character is really about managing his resources the right way. So at the beginning of the game, if he's standing out here, he'll use his resource much faster compared to the previous patch in Season 1. So a combination of Bridget being really fast and having big buttons and being able to establish her offense easily, plus this traveling so quickly, in combination with his weak defense. Again, he has no reversal, no DP, no nothing, just meter options. And again, he's good at mashing out of stuff, but it's not easy to mash out of Bridget's pressure. And then Bridget has a reversal. She does have DP, which matters for things like this. So this familiar string. This helps out against him quite a bit. And most importantly, combining this, she has things that are effective against Happy Chaos. He doesn't usually like fighting fast characters like Chip. Since she's relatively new, and then these changes came from the December patch, people don't know how to fight her very well, which is pretty important in tournaments in general. In fighting game tournaments, you have like two paths basically. You can pick something that is established and you know that's good, or you could pick something that you think is good but people don't know really well. Both are good for different reasons. If you pick the thing that you know that's good and everyone knows that is good, you are certain that one, the character is good and the strategy is good. It's easier for you to take responsibility for the things you do wrong as well. But then the main downside is people prepare for your character a lot. Even in the case where some people say that people don't fight against Happy Chaos very well, still overall you're going to reach a point in the bracket where people are ready for the character, or they'll have some type of counter or something. In a non-established character's case, you pick a character that people think is good but is not really fleshed out. People don't really know why. So on the one hand, you're taking a risk because you don't have anyone to copy, you don't really know how good the thing is, but if the thing works out, it can work out really well. I think it's less common in 1v1 games. Basically, when this happens, it's usually just from DLC characters. This is more of a thing in team games in my opinion, but with more fighting games having this like season pass thing, new characters are coming out all the time, it does happen like once a season or something like that. And for Guilty Gear Strive in particular, we're getting 4 characters. We're just the first one, right? We get one more character in April and then one final character when we don't know when the 4th character is going to be released. So really we have just the 3 characters to look at: Bridget, Sin, and we're assuming Delilah. So all these things put together is why I feel like Bridget is starting to kind of rumble up the competitive scene a little bit. Let me know how you guys feel though. As usual, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.